I was standing on a dimly lit street corner, my breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. As I shivered, I tapped my phone screen and ordered an Uber to take me home. The app indicated that my ride was just a few minutes away. A black sedan pulled up in front of me and the driver's window rolled down. A man with an unsettling smile greeted me, his eyes brightly in the faint glow of the street lamp. I hesitated for a moment, a flicker of unease passing through me, but I shrugged it off as my overactive imagination. "Are you my Uber?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his smile widening slightly. "Yes, get in. I'll take you where you need to go." I slid into the back seat and the car pulled away from the curb. The interior was dimly lit, the only source of light coming from the soft glow of the dashboard. As we drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this driver. His eyes seemed to linger on me in the rearview mirror, his smile never faltering. "Are you having a good night?" he asked, his voice overly friendly, but there was an edge to it that made me uneasy. I mumbled a response, my gaze fixed on the passing buildings outside. The streets were growing emptier, the darkness seeming to swallow us whole. Suddenly, the car took a sharp turn onto a deserted road, far away from the main thoroughfare. I glanced at the app on my phone, my heart pounding as I realized that the route he was taking was nowhere close to my destination. "Excuse me, this isn't the right way," I repeated, my voice laced with panic. The driver didn't respond, his smile now a sinister grin that sent a chill down my spine. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling as I attempted to dial for help, only to find that there was no signal. The car came to a stop in front of an old abandoned building, its windows boarded up, the very essence of a place forgotten by time. "Why are we here?" I demanded, my fear turning into a surge of adrenaline. The driver turned to me, his eyes burning with hatred. "We've arrived at your new home," he replied, his voice dripping with evil. My heart hammered against my ribcage as I fumbled for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. I screamed for help, pounding on the windows, but the sound seemed to disappear into the night, swallowed by the darkness that enveloped us. The driver's grin widened as he reached over, his hand closing around my wrist in an iron grip. "Let's have some fun," he said, his breath hot against my ear. I struggled, fighting with all my strength, but he was overpowering, his strength seemingly fueled by an incredible force. My mind raced, my thoughts scattering in the face of the impending danger. Just as my hope began to fade, a distant light appeared in the darkness, the sound of approaching sirens cutting through the night. The driver's grip faltered for a moment, and I seized the opportunity, wrenching myself free and flinging the door open. I sprinted towards the approaching police cars, my heart pounding in my chest, the adrenaline urging my legs to move faster. The authorities arrived just in time, surrounding the car and arresting the driver. As I stood there, trembling and shaken, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped a fate far worse than I could have ever imagined. The night had been a nightmare, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows, waiting for an unsuspecting victim to fall into their grasp. It was revealed that the driver had been a suspect in a series of kidnappings that had plagued the city for months. The authorities had been tirelessly pursuing leads, trying to put an end to the string of disappearances that had baffled the community. The driver, it turned out, had been carefully selecting his victims, preying on unsuspecting individuals who had hailed rides late at night. He had used his job as an Uber driver to gain the trust of his passengers, luring them into his car with his seemingly harmless demeanor. Once they were in his sedan, he would take them to a remote location, a secluded hideout where no one could hear their cries for help. The police uncovered a horrifying scene at the abandoned building where the driver had taken his victims. There were chains bolted to the walls, evidence of the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The driver had been keeping his captives there, subjecting them to unspeakable torture and torment. The discovery sent shockwaves through the city, leaving a trail of trauma and fear in its wake. It was a harrowing reminder of the darkness that could lurk behind even the most harmless appearances, a cautionary tale that urged everyone to remain vigilant and wary of the dangers that could hide in plain sight. The police's relentless pursuit had finally put an end to the driver's reign of terror, bringing some closure and justice to the victims and their families. But the scars left behind would take much longer to heal, a haunting reminder of the nightmarish reality that had unfolded on those dark, desolate streets. I myself am still dealing with the trauma of that night and grateful to still be alive to tell my story, promising myself of never letting my guard down ever again. In the heart of the city, there stood the coroner's office, a place where the deceased found their final resting place. I, a night shift security guard, would often find myself patrolling the dimly lit corridors, the only sound being the soft hum of the overhead lights and the occasional creak of the building settling into the night. One chilly evening, as I made my rounds, I noticed an eerie chill in the air, sending a shiver down my spine. I tried to shake off the feeling, convincing myself it was just the draft from an old building. But then I heard it, a faint rustling sound coming from one of the examination rooms. My heart raced, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I cautiously approached the half-open door, the silence around me becoming almost deafening. As I peered inside, my breath caught in my throat. There, in the faint glow of a flickering light, I saw a figure draped in a tattered shroud, hunched over an examination table. Its movements were slow and deliberate, sending a chill down my spine. I couldn't make out its face, but I could sense an otherworldly presence that seemed to seep from its very being. The air grew heavy with an unmistakable sense of despair, as if the room itself was filled with the weight of all the souls that had passed through it. I watched, rooted to the spot, as the figure's ghostly fingers traced intricate patterns on the cold steel surface. A rasping sound filled the room, like a voice struggling to break through from the realm of the departed. The figure turned slowly towards me, and in that moment I felt an icy grip wrap itself around my heart. Its sunken eyes bore into mine, and I could almost feel the weight of its suffering, a burden that no mortal should have to endure. With a jolt, I fumbled for the emergency alarm, its shrill wail piercing the silence of the night. But as the sound faded, so did the figure, vanishing into the darkness as if it were never there. I was left standing there, my mind reeling with the encounter, unable to shake the feeling that the coroner's office held secrets far beyond the realm of the living, secrets that would forever haunt my nights to come. It was Halloween night, and the familiar atmosphere of excitement and eerie anticipation filled the air. I had decorated my house with fake cobwebs, glowing pumpkins, and spooky props, getting into the spirit of the holiday. As the sun set and the sky darkened, I settled on my comfortable couch, ready for a night of binge-watching classic horror films. The room was bathed in the soft, flickering glow of the television, casting shifting shadows that danced across the walls. The wind outside howled through the trees, adding an extra layer of suspense to the chilling scenes playing out on the screen. My attention was fully captured by the terrifying narrative unfolding before me, and the outside world seemed to slip away. However, as the clock struck midnight, a sudden creaking noise echoed through the hallway, causing me to startle and sit up straight. I paused the movie, straining my ears to catch any other sounds. The old house often made settling noises, but this seemed different, as if someone or something was deliberately moving about. A sense of unease settled in my stomach, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I slowly got up from the couch, my footsteps cautious and deliberate as I crept towards the hallway, trying to keep my breathing steady. The house felt colder than before, and each step seemed to echo louder in the silence. As I peered into the darkness, a huge shadow caught my eye, disappearing just as quickly. A chill ran down my spine, and my heart began to race. With trembling hands, I fumbled for the nearest light switch, flooding the hallway with a dim, flickering light. That's when I saw him, a figure dressed in dark clothing, wearing a grotesque mask that seemed to twist and contort with every movement. I froze in place, my mind struggling to process the terrifying sight before me. The intruder's eyes gleamed with an unnatural intensity, as if peering into the depths of my soul. "Trick or treat," he said, his voice low and menacing, sending a shiver down my spine. His hand extended towards me, the fingers curling into a claw-like gesture that seemed to beckon me closer. Fear gripped me in its icy embrace, and I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. In a desperate attempt to escape, I ran to the kitchen counter where I left my phone, my fingers shaking as I dialed 911, my voice cracking under the pressure of fear as I explained the situation to the operator. The masked figure advanced slowly, his movements deliberate and calculated, as if savoring the terror that he was instilling in me. With every step, the atmosphere grew more oppressive, the air thick with an unspoken threat. As I heard the distant sirens growing closer, I made a split-second decision and bolted towards the front door, my heart pounding in my chest. With a rush of relief, I flung it open, the cool night air hitting my face like a breath of freedom. But when I turned to look back, the masked intruder had vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only the lingering sense of fear and the unsettling realization that the sanctuary of my home was far more vulnerable than I had ever imagined. 6 months later, and the authorities still have no leads of the masked intruder. For all I know, he could still be out there watching me and waiting for the next opportunity to finish whatever he was out for.